우리는 일을 해서 투자를 해서 돈을 법니다. 그리고 국가에 세금을 내죠. 그리고 힘들게 번 돈으로 자산을 취득할 때도 심지어 자녀에게 물려줄 때도 세금을 냅니다. 반면 국가는 매년 화폐를 찍어냅니다. 빚을 져서요. 그렇게 국가가 진 빚 때문에 내가 낼 세금은 계속 늘어납니다. 내가 번 돈의 가치는 희석이 되고 여러 방면으로 쪼개집니다. 오늘 영상은 단기간에 시가총액을 10억 달러에서 1천억 달러로 기업 가치는 6억 달러에서 1,050억 달러로 만든 비트코인 부자 마이클 세일러의 인터뷰 영상입니다.
Satoshi, many years ago, had this vision for sound money and sovereign money via technology, via modern cryptography, modern semiconductors, the modern internet. And that idea of giving economic power to the individual in the face of the overwhelming power of the collective, when you feel like the government's against you, the banking system against you, the currency is against you, big tech is against you, when you're the little guy, when you're struggling for freedom and struggling in the face of overwhelming power, you need some advantage. And Satoshi created this network that's based on two principles. One principle is integrity, and the other principle is sovereignty. The integrity, we all know, is there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin that no one can tamper with, no one can corrupt, not a nation state, not a company, not a politician. And that idea of a censorship-resistant, unstoppable version of the truth was a first in human history.
It was a first.
And then the second idea is sovereignty. It's like, well, if there is a truth, can you own it? Right? So with Bitcoin, the idea is you can own a Bitcoin and you don't have to trust a bank with it in the custody of a big company. You can take self-custody. And that was an idea worth nothing for a year. And then it became worth $1 million. And then it became worth $1 billion. And then it became worth $10 billion. And then it became worth $100 billion. And when MicroStrategy, now Strategy, got into business about 4 years ago, it was worth $150 billion. And today it's worth $2 trillion.
And at that time, you were a software company, and you saw this as an opportunity, a different opportunity.
We were a software company, and we were staring at a quick death or slow death or take a risk. And you know, when the COVID lockdowns took place and the interest rates went to zero, we had to decide. And Bitcoin offered us the way out, because if you recapitalize the company on Bitcoin, you're not slave to the bank, you're not slave to the currency, you're not slave to the local politician that tells you what you can do and how you can use your money. Instead of having the central bank take interest rates to zero and keep them there forever, right? Bitcoin gave us a 60% return every year, because the Bitcoin interest rate is set by a global decentralized system of capital flows. So my company was able to save itself when we switched from Bitcoin, from the US Treasury or the bond to Bitcoin. Our market cap increased from $1 billion to $100 billion. And our enterprise value increased from 600 million to 105 billion. And we went from a $500 million company growing 0% a year, competing against a monopoly, Microsoft, where it's hopeless, to a $50 billion company growing 60% a year. So, you know, if you think about the world today, there's just an inherent force. There's a struggle between capitalism and socialism, between people that believe in freedom and free markets and those that believe in central planning and collectivism. And if I'm a socialist, I want to take away your guns and your money. And Bitcoin is money that they can't take away. Like, what freedom do you have if you have all of your money in a bank? What freedom do you have if you have your money embedded in a currency where someone can print 4x more of it without your approval and debase it to zero? What freedom do you have if you own real estate in a city where the mayor can put rent control on it or expropriate it, or the governor can tax it away from your family? So Bitcoin represents putting your economic wealth in cyberspace. It's beyond the reach of the mayor, beyond the reach of the governor, beyond the reach of any nation state, beyond the reach of any other company that would do you harm. It is the first time in the history of the human race that you can bind economic energy tightly to an individual, to a family, to your company, and you don't have to ask permission to have economic wealth, to have money, and you don't have to live in fear that someone gets up on a morning and just takes it all away from you to power you down.
마이클 세일러의 말이 모두 맞는지는 저도 모르겠습니다. 다만 부자들이 자산의 일부를 분산하고 누군가가 가져가지 못하게 온전히 지킬 자산을 꼽으라고 한다면 비트코인 말고 쉽사리 떠오르는 자산이 없는 건 사실입니다. 이처럼 부자들은 일반인이 하지 못하는 생각들을 과감히 하고 도전함에 부자가 되는 것 같습니다. 이어질 내용은 마이클 세일러가 보는 향후 비트코인 전망에 대한 이야기입니다. 이어보시죠. 영상 하단 더보기란과 고정 댓글에 앤드류 트레이딩 팀 관전방 입장 링크가 있습니다.
And so if I am conservative, I want a family, I want a company, I want freedom. Well, how are you going to pay for it? And if you live in a country like Venezuela and the currency goes to zero, you're going to be begging for food next week. Wouldn't it be great if I could take the wealth of my family and put it into a network that no one can loot, no one can corrupt, and at the end of the day, I don't want to gamble my future. I don't want to take my life savings and gamble in the stock market. I don't want to take my life savings and gamble that the mayor of the city won't just take my property away from me. I actually just want to own the wealth. I want to own my money. And Bitcoin is a way for you to convert your capital into digital capital that will last 1,000 years. Your country will be, your company, your country, or your family will be wealthy for generations to follow. You don't have to live in fear. And when you don't have to live in fear, when you have economic independence, you can actually stretch your time horizon out and you can build an institution, you can build your family, you can build a life for yourself. And so where is the money headed in the future? The money's headed to cyberspace. The 21st century is going to be 1 billion AIs thinking 1 million times a second. And what are they going to be using to move their money around? They're going to use digital money because they can't get a bank account. They can't get a credit card. I have to approve my wire transfers from my bank once a week. It takes about 20 minutes, and they ask me on the phone whether the money should move. We've been doing it that way for 50 years. And if you look at the way the digital economy is going to run in the 21st century, it's going to be 1 billion computers thinking 1 million times a second, moving assets at the speed of light. Bitcoin represents digital capital. That network is $2 trillion today. It's going to be $20 trillion in 4 to 8 years. It's going to be $200 trillion in 20 years. Then it's going to grow faster than every other asset in the world. It's going to continue to grow.